So Kirsten O'Connell has 30 years of experience as an occupational therapist. She's worked across various aspects of aged care, from hospitals and nursing homes to community home visiting and day therapy. Kirsten, we're really delighted to welcome you as our first speaker. You're also going to be joined by Tamara, Tanya, Caputo and Samuel Dakey, but I'll allow you to introduce them when the time comes. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Really looking forward to our panel discussion. It's a really nice way to start the session today, I think. So our discussion today is going to be about LifeCurve and how it might be represented in real life practice. So I came to work at ILA almost 2.5 years ago, and that's where I discovered LifeCurve. And as an OT, I had really wondered where LifeCurve had been all of my life. It was like this little nugget of gold that was buried in the Commonwealth Home Support Program, the last 3 iterations of it, yet no one really knew about it. And when I discovered it, I really thought it had such great potential for enhancing discussions around reablement and also reablement practice. So because of that, at KeepAble, we've actually invested quite a lot of time into developing learning opportunities about LifeCurve. And so again, today we're really looking forward to now talking to people who have taken those ideas and really transitioned them into practice. But before we get to our panel, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time giving you a quick overview of LifeCurve, because I appreciate that not everybody will be familiar with it. And we just want to make sure that everyone has enough context to enjoy the panel discussion. So it will be a brief overview, but hopefully it'll get you across the line for this morning. So this is LifeCurve, and this is a framework that was developed in response to findings by a Newcastle University research team led by Professor Peter Gore. That's Newcastle in the UK, not Australia. And this research team studied older adults all over the world to find out how functional abilities are affected by the normal aging process. And their research really revealed lots of interesting things. One of the key factors that we're going to be reiterating many times today is that the loss of functional abilities related to normal aging can be delayed or slowed down by positive lifestyle choices and the right support. So this is obviously speaking, really directly to reablement opportunities. It's possible to compress most of that age-related decline into a very short period, very late in life. And the researchers refer to that as the compression of functional decline. So we're squeezing most of the functional decline into very late life. The team also discovered or determined that there were 2 really common patterns of functional decline that people experienced as they age, and one is much more desirable than the other, and we're going to get to that soon and have a chat about that. So the main components of LifeCurve are the 2 axes on the graph there. We've got this mysterious looking red dotted line at the top, the couple of curves in the middle, and some little prompts about intervention types. So we're just going to briefly overview those so you have an appreciation of what they represent in this framework. So in the course of this research, the team discovered that in the process of normal aging, functional abilities are actually lost in quite a predictable order. And this order is shown on the vertical axis of the LifeCurve that you can see there. The most challenging activities, which are those green ones, are at the top. So the most challenging one being hiking, and the least challenging ones are at the bottom. So right down to that ability to eat independently. The horizontal axis represents the time elapsed. So obviously time elapsing moving from left to right. But one thing that you'll notice about this horizontal axis is that there are no years or ages attached to that. And the reason for that is because people experience age-related functional decline at different times and different rates. So this is really indicative of the fact that we can't predict when somebody is going to experience functional loss. It also ties into this really strong ageism message that we shouldn't just assume that people are going to be declining significantly in a functional way just because of their age. Interestingly, the Newcastle research team found out that there were people experiencing concerning functional decline as young as in their 40s, and yet we could have people in their 80s and 90s who are doing really well. So LifeCurve represents patterns of functional decline. It does not tell us when to expect it. This red dotted line up the top is, I think this is one of the real strengths of this framework, and it represents the point where a person is now commencing concerning functional decline. And you can see in here that the very first ADL that sits underneath that red line is cutting toenails. This is such a useful tool for us because it's this immediate red flag that somebody is commencing concerning functional decline. Yet we so often overlook this particular task. We accept it as a normal part of aging, and we might just say to someone, okay, no problem, just pop off and go and see the podiatrist and get your toenails cut by them. So I think if we know that this is actually a red flag, it gives us this amazing opportunity to be able to jump in and intervene earlier than perhaps historically we do. The two curves are really the really key factors of LifeCurve, and they represent possible trajectories of functional losses. So if you have a look at the purple curve, you can see that it represents a really early and quite precipitous or rapid functional decline. You can see that a person that might be sitting on this purple curve of decline is really losing the ability to do a lot of functional activities very early on. And then for the remainder of the lifespan, they're really living in a zone of quite significant dependency. Compared to that, if we look at the blue curve, we may have somebody who is commencing on a pattern of functional decline, but you can see that they are maintaining an engagement in those functional activities for a much longer period of time. That blue curve sits higher for a lot longer. And then we're only seeing the really precipitous drop off, even if it happens at all, only at the very end of life. So that's that reflection of the compression of functional decline. LifeCurve does not tell us that people live longer. This isn't about length of life, but it's about quality of life. So if we now compare those two curves, you can see that the person on the blue curve is living better for longer. If you were an older adult, so this is one to throw out to you, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to see your responses here, but hopefully you'll better see each other's. If you were an older adult, I'm curious to know what would your preferred path be. So if you sort of have a look at your emoticons there and have a look for the thumbs up, just throw a thumbs up into the chat if as an older adult you think the purple curve would be your preferred path. And then put a thumbs up if you think the purple curve would be your preferred path as an older adult. And unfortunately, I'm not able to see the responses, but I'm hoping that you can see each other. And I'm going to make an assumption that probably a lot of people would have chosen that blue curve. So if that's the case, if we would prefer that as a preferred path as we get older, the chances are that your clients would prefer that preferred path as they get older too. The interventions are also outlined in the LifeCurve. And so one of the first ones that it highlights is this potential to Reabble. And what LifeCurve tells us is that there's really clear window of opportunity really high up on those curves to entertain Reablement. This is a great opportunity to actually improve capacity, build capacity, so make people fitter, improve cognition, improve social engagement, all of those elements. That is the best window of opportunity is up the top there. If a person is moving or has a functional capacity that is represented more sort of in the middle of that vertical axis, often we are intervening in a very compensatory way. So that might be the time where someone's having trouble walking, so they have a walking frame. They might be having trouble getting off the toilet, so we're giving them an over-toilet frame and rails. And assistive equipment is really important for helping people be independent, but it's not actually building their capacity or building their skills. So you can imagine that when someone has their functional ability has dropped quite a way down the life curve, it's actually really hard to climb your way back up again. And so while some reablement is still possible, we always think it's never too early and never too late. It's harder the further down that the access somebody drops. And then the final intervention is care. And so now we are looking at people that are realistically requiring family to support them, services to come into the home, a lot more doing the task for people because they're unable to undertake them themselves. And this cohort of people is really quite precipitous from the point of view of whether they're going to require residential care or not. So we're still at this point looking to try and encourage people to use it or lose it, but you can see that working your way back up access would be very difficult. So that is a really quick overview of LifeCurve, and I hope that that's going to give you enough to enjoy our panel discussion. And so I would like to welcome this morning Tamara Ryan, Tanya Caputo, and Samuel Dakey. I am going to stop sharing my screen and hopefully get to be able to see our panel members. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Kirsten.
Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
So just very quickly for our audience, Tamara is a LiveUp navigator, Tanya is a care service employee with BaptistCare, and Samuel is a PhD candidate and researcher. And I'm going to give you both, all of you, your special introduction later. So what I would like to do is start with talking with Tamara. Tamara, you're currently working as a navigator with the LiveUp program.
That's correct.
Role. Yep.
Yeah.
You're supporting older people to embrace strategies and opportunities that are going to enhance quality of life and help them live better for longer.
Absolutely.
But that is just the tip of the iceberg, because you've got quite a strong pedigree in wellness and reablement, going right back to 2003, when you were an enrolled nurse working in the personal enablement program with the Silver Chain, which is based in WA. And this was a groundbreaking program for wellness and reablement. And you were there for quite a long period of time until COVID came along and you retrained as a RAS assessor. Yep.
Yes.
So that then gave you the opportunity to start having reablement conversations with people at a person's entry point into aged care.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's that perspective that we want to talk with you about today, is how LifeCurve influenced your practice as a RAS assessor.
Yes, absolutely. And look, I remember, Kirsten, I had never heard of LifeCurve, and I was very familiar with setting goals with clients when I was nursing. But those goals were very clinical goals. They were my goals. They were, I want to heal this wound. And of course, the client wanted that too. But we never delved into the kind of goals that I would set with them as an assessor. So when I started as an assessor, the challenge was I would want to go in, rescue them, fix them, and make a goal for them, and then be on my way. So it was quite challenging for me to change my way of thinking. And initially, the challenge that I had was the kind of barrier, the resistance, the I need a service, you're the gatekeeper, give me the service. And I'd been looking for something to open that conversation of reablement, because when I was starting, before I learnt about LifeCurve, I was going through these in-depth kind of discussions and trying to explain things. I was using terminology people might not understand. And so I remember distinctly when I learnt about LifeCurve, we had Shaz from KeepAble. We were doing the transition from the NSAF to the new integrated assessment tool. And as part of that training, KeepAble came out to do this presentation. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, not more training. I was a bit overwhelmed with it all, trying to learn the whole new system. But I remember she put up this LifeCurve and it was like everything just stopped. And I was like, where has this visual tool been? Like, I've been looking for it and I didn't know it existed. And I was so excited. I remember I was so passionate about what she was talking about. I rushed home after the presentation, printed off, I think, 30 copies of the colour LifeCurve, laminated them and put them into my assessor bag. And yeah, I was so excited that I'd found this tool.
So, Tamara, after that presentation and after you saw LifeCurve, what was it that you thought LifeCurve was going to offer to your clients and in your role as a res assessor? So what did you like about it?
I loved that it was a clear, simple, colourful tool. It showed clearly what functional decline looks like. But more importantly to me, it showed that providing a service, prescribing a service that somebody might not be ready for, might not actually need, was actually taking skills away from them. It was doing them a disservice. And it was a nice, clear way to show them that. Like I said before, that I wasn't some gatekeeper, I wasn't some mean assessor saying you can't have it. I was clearly able to show them, absolutely, you can have all these services. And I remember I'd go into clients' homes and they'd be sitting with their little Commonwealth home support booklet in front of them. And it was like they were at a restaurant with a menu. They were open to the services page and they'd be like, give me a little bit of this. Oh, yeah, I'd love a bit of that. Oh, yeah, gardening. Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I'll have me some of that. And so it was a great way to actually go, well, let's have a look at how that looks. Like, if we were to give you all these services, we're de-skilling you, we're taking away your choice and control. You know, we're taking away skills, moments of movement that are so important for you to have more good days than bad days. So for me, it was just a really nice, clear tool. And I would start it by handing them this laminated copy of the LifeCurve, explaining what it was, and saying to them, where do you think you are on this chart? And it was quite interesting because a lot of clients would meet me almost at the door with their Zimmer or their walker or a walking stick saying, I need a cleaner. I'm tired. I've been doing it my whole life. And I'd go, yeah, let's have a look at how all that looks. And being able to actually get them to chart where they thought they were and where they actually were two quite different things a lot of the time. And it was just such a nice way to show them where they actually could be, where they wanted to be. It just opened up the conversation for reablement really nicely. And it opened up the conversation for what are your actual goals. And I loved that.
A couple of themes in there. I guess you were utilising that as the opportunity to get the client to reflect on their own current functional abilities.
Absolutely.
And then you found that by using LifeCurve, you could actually show that if I come in and I approve you for all of these services that you don't actually need, we're setting you on the purple path,
yes,
which is the one of the steep decline early. And
for sure. And to say to them, this could be fast tracking you to residential aged care, possibly. You know, there's kind of that evidence that shows that once you stop cutting your toenails, if you don't do something about it, there can be a rapid decline. And within 10 years, you could be in a residential aged care facility. And it was just able to change that mindset of, I want to stay living independently in my own home and I need services to do that. It was able to actually turn that around on its head and go, actually, if you want to stay living independently in your own home, let's keep your skills. Let's keep your choice and control. Let's give you back your confidence. It was all of those things.
I'm just going to just sort of throw out to the audience, and maybe if you don't mind using your emoticons again, but Tamara, you're really sort of talking to us about the fact that there's this desire or this sense of like entitlement to have all of these services and that sort of thing, and that you used to get a lot of resistance if you were sort of discouraging that. This is before you discovered LifeCurve. Is that an experience that other people in the audience can relate to? Just give us a thumbs up if that sounds quite familiar to you. sure if people can find their emoticons or not there. So, but that was certainly familiar, an existing concern for you as a RAS assessor. So how receptive were clients to that conversation?
Look, having that visual tool that was so clear, it was colourful, it was easy to explain. I distinctly remember a client that I went to, and she was actually a clinical nurse. So having a clinical tool that I could explain to her, it really spoke to her. Now, I vividly remembered this assessment. I went there and she met me at the front door with her Zimmer frame. Now, she'd fallen over the vacuum cleaner and she'd fractured her neck of femur. So it was quite serious. You know, I'm going in, this lady's like, my life's changed. I know what this means. This is the end for me. I'm a nurse. I know if you fractured your neck of femur, that's it. So I've given up. I need an ACAT assessment urgently. I need all of these things. And so I was able to say to her, have you ever heard of LifeCurve? And she hadn't. And she was very open to learning about it. It was evidence-based. And so we went through the LifeCurve together. And it was interesting because she was like, I need someone to shower me. I can't shower myself. And when we did the active assessment, it was actually that somebody was standby assistance for reassurance. And so I was able to say to her, look, absolutely, let's keep your showering person in until you've regained that confidence to do it yourself. You know, she was like, I need a cleaner. I absolutely need a cleaner. And I said, you know, when we actually spoke about it, she was fearful of the vacuum cleaner. That's what had tripped her over. That's what had broken her neck of femur. And so we were able to then talk about low-risk assistive products and saying, what about you get rid of, you know, the archaic vacuum cleaner? Have you ever thought about a stick vac? You know, and it was just able to open those conversations. And by the end of it, she was like, oh, I don't need an ACAT. And we identified that her goal was she wanted to return to work. But she'd been a bit ageist to herself. She'd gone, I'm this old, I've fallen, I fractured my neck of femur. It's the end. And I was able to say, it's not the end. You can do whatever you want to do. Your life can look however you want to look at, however you want it to look like. What skills do you want? How are we going to get there? And it was just such a lovely, I remember by the time I left, she actually walked me to the door without the Zimmer frame. And it was just such a great feeling that I was able to let her know it's her life. It's not the end. You know, she can have what she wants. It was just really, really lovely.
And that's that real thing about LifeCurve is that the science, the research are telling us that people have the potential to improve, that it's not always a downhill trajectory for all people, or that there are points in time that we can really re-able and improve. Now, we're going to run... I want to keep to time, but very quickly, I think that probably a lot of people may relate to your experiences that I know you shared with me about the fact that sometimes the client wanted to be independent, but the family were really insistent on having services. Was LifeCurve useful to you as an assessor in sharing that science, that aging science with families as well, and getting them on board?
For sure. And again, I remember clearly an assessment I went to. It was a lovely, easy assessment. I went in, the lady was like, I want to remain independent. We were halfway through the assessment. I remember we were in the garden. She was like, I manage the garden. It's nice and easy care. And like a thunderstorm, these dark clouds rolled in. The daughter arrived. Now, very well-intentioned daughter, wanted the best for her mum. And she came in, ignore all that, cancel all that. My mum needs everything. What have you got? She needs meals. She can't cook anymore. She's too tired. She's paid her taxes. She is owed this. And so being able to... Now, my quick, easy assessment went from what I thought was going to be about an hour to, I think it was 2.5, nearly 3 hours, because I had to sit down, go over the LifeCurve, showed her clearly. And when she understood that if I was going to give all these services to her mum, wrap her mum in cotton wool, take away any kind of risk, you know, what if mum's in the kitchen and she falls over because she was trying to stand too long? And when we were able to actually go through, we could put all these services in. Your mum doesn't want them. She clearly doesn't want them. And we can fast track her to functional decline, clearly then she went, oh no, that's not what I want for mum. And it was just really nice to explain, look, I understand you care about your mum, you love your mum, you want the best for her, but the best for her is keeping her skills, having more good days than bad days, keeping her confidence, keeping her choice and control. That's the best for your mum. So helping her is actually helping her retain that independence, not helping her fast track to functional decline.
Right. So I'm going to move on to Tanya in a minute, but would it be fair to say that once you started utilising LifeCurve, that it really facilitated reablement conversations with your clients? And not wanting to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but did you find that engagement with reablement changed?
Yeah, for sure. It just turned things around for me. It clearly explained why doing for a client instead of doing with was taking away their choice and control. And I remember back in my early training when we were in a nursing.
I'm gonna have to.
I could go on and on. So yeah, you're gonna have to stop me.
So for our audience, you will probably get it. Tamara's very passionate about life.
Very
Passionate. We could talk all day. You will see more of Tamara via KeepAble, but we can talk about that another time. So I'm just going to thank you so much, Tamara, for sharing perspective. So hold on the line with us, and I'm just going to move to Tanya. Tanya, welcome.
Good morning, Kirsten.
So for our audience, Tanya has been working with BaptistCare for 3 years as a care service employee. And so Tanya works in people's homes, supporting them with personal care, domestic assistance, and their social needs, and also works in a social group program. Now, Tanya, you've gained quite a reputation at BaptistCare for your commitment to reablement principles and how you find reablement opportunities in everyday activities.
Yes.
So you were already really committed to reablement, 100% on board, well recognised with the people that you work with. And to the extent that we are recording a podcast with you about your experiences, so we're looking forward to that. But despite the fact that you were already on board with reablement, we asked you to look at LifeCurve to see if it might influence your ideas about those ageing trajectories for older people and where reablement opportunities lie. And we'd really like to talk about that with you today.
Absolutely. Yes. Wonderful. Sounds great.
So, Tanya, what we'll do, we'll just start with talking about what resources did you use to learn about LifeCurve? Because we didn't come and give you a personalised presentation. How did you learn about it?
Yes. So, Kirsten, I was introduced to LifeCurve using the e-learning system. So I first looked at the bite-sized session, and which was obviously the smaller session. And after that, I was extremely eager to complete the full course. And all I can say is I am so pleased that I did. I really am. I'm very, very pleased that I went on and looked at the full course. Amazing.
Right. So we've got 2 e-learning modules on the KeepAble website. And yes, we do have a bite-sized learning, but we recommend for individuals to start with that e-learning. And your experience was that was a useful strategy. Yes. So the first one being the introduction to LifeCurve, which is sort of what I talked about earlier this morning, and the second one about how you might use LifeCurve to talk to your client.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Yep.
So, Tanya, the initial research around compression of functional decline that Peter Gore did, that research paper, and we've got a link to that and some information we're going to give everyone at the end of the session, they suggested that this idea of compression of functional decline, which is now represented as the LifeCurve, is really easy to understand for workers, for clients, for families, for everybody. Would you concur with that? Do you think that was really accessible content?
Look, absolutely. I really do, Kirsten. It was extremely easy to understand. I will say, previous to the course, LifeCurve was completely foreign to me. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that it existed. So once I began the course, though, a lot of things began to make sense. Yeah. I mean, a lot. I was able to recognise the evidence and research that has gone into it. I could clearly recognise that. I could see how much work has gone into it and the research, and I loved that it is evidence-based. And for me as a care worker, I've been able to use that, what I have learned, to better my practice in my role. So, yeah.
What were the key ideas, Tanya, that really resonated with you? So were there any sort of really sort of strong take-home messages that really resonated with you that you wanted to apply in your practice?
Yes, there were quite a few. Absolutely. So learning the LifeCurve made me realise realistically that potentially I may have missed some opportunities of wellness and reablement conversations and referrals for clients. I personally found myself thinking of several of my clients and what steps I would have taken if I knew what I did now. In my time as a care worker, there have been some wonderful wellness and reablement outcomes with clients that I've supported, and there have been some quite challenging ones, which I think that we all understand that. When I go out in the community or clients come to our social group, my main focus is always ensuring that the clients are in the front seat of their own journey, and knowing that I'm not there to do absolutely everything for them. Since understanding the LifeCurve, though, I feel I now have the knowledge that people can have more better days, and that is really important. Something that I sort of didn't look at it in that way. I knew that, yes, my intention and what we go out to do, but to look at it that people can have better days, which is that's important. That really is, and that resonated with me.
Was it the visual aspect of LifeCurve? What was it that jumped out at you from LifeCurve that sort of drew you closer to that sort of conclusion?
Yeah, absolutely, Kirsten. Absolutely, it was the visual side of it. I study 2 nights a week already, and I feel that with the LifeCurve, the visual side of it, it was very interactive. It absolutely kept me engaged throughout part 1 and part 2 of the course. I was really engaged, and just the visual side. The 15 markers were very easy to understand. Obviously, the 15 and then the 4 above the dotted line, that was really easy to understand in the way it was put. The colours, even in the curve, something so simple, but it stood out. It really stood out and made it very easy to grasp.
That blue curve, purple curve element.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
So obviously it really impacted you in terms of how you're thinking about your work. Do you think LifeCurve is something that so just for context, you've actually only got on board with LifeCurve really recently?
Yes.
So this is, I guess, a bit of a hypothetical question, but do you think that LifeCurve content is something that you'd consider talking to your clients about?
Yes, I would. I would feel confident within the scope of my practice, and if the rapport had been built, Kirsten, I would feel completely comfortable to do that. I would absolutely refer, so I feel comfortable to refer. And I think now that I have got the knowledge of LifeCurve, I've been able to identify when I do need to refer. And that is extremely important for the overall well-being of the client. So whereas I think that there's certain things that I would pick up now. So if I'm in a client's home and they say to me, I struggled to cut my toenails this morning, I now have the knowledge to understand, okay, is this time to have a cup of tea and a conversation? And can I refer this? Because can we help here?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so what can you be doing? And then also that red flag about or maybe we can bring somebody in a bit, maybe an allied health professional, someone as well, and get them in nice and early before they drop too far down that vertical axis.
Absolutely, Kirsten, because a comment like that I potentially could have overlooked to understanding where that's sat on the LifeCurve, and understanding that is just below the dotted line, the dotted red line, and that's in that Reable. That Reable, I think that is that important time. Hey, let's see what we can do here. We are obviously, as care workers, we are the eyes out there. We see our clients daily, and we are, our role is observation and reporting. Yep. And So what we see, and if we tend to see things that potentially could be out of the ordinary for clients. So when we have got that knowledge with the LifeCurve, we can then act on that as well for better outcomes for the client.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tanya. So I'm conscious of time and I want to make sure that we have some time for Samuel as well. So thanks so much for those perspectives. We really appreciate your time. Samuel, welcome this morning.
Lovely to see you.
Quick introduction about you. So Samuel is a PhD candidate with the MARCS Institute for Brain, Behaviour and Development at Western Sydney University. He has an undergraduate degree in psychology and sociology and a master's in policy studies. Samuel is currently undertaking a research project called Rethinking Reablement, and he's investigating person-centred and inclusive frameworks that can enhance reablement outcomes for culturally diverse older adults. So we're really quite fascinated about this conversation and how LifeCurve can be represented in this area of practice. So in Samuel's research, he's utilising the LifeCurve framework and examining its applicability to culturally diverse populations. So your project, Rethinking Reablement, is right on brand for us. So we were really pleased that you were coming to talk to us. Before I start asking you some questions, I did just want to highlight that Samuel co-authored a paper that was published last year called Towards Cultural Inclusion for Older Adults from Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Communities, a commentary on recent aged care reforms. And there's some really interesting content in that I wanted to share with you just to really highlight why this discussion is so important. So in this paper, it was identified that 1/3 of older adults over the age of 65 are from culturally and linguistically diverse communities. That people from CALD communities who are between the ages of 65 and 79 years require more care than their Anglo-Australian counterparts. So that's so concerning and so indicative of why this conversation about reablement is so important. And that paper also highlighted the health inequities for CALD older adults with language barriers, culturally inappropriate services, lower health literacy, and even, I wasn't aware, but even less likely to be included in clinical trials. That there's a bit of an uphill battle in some communities, maybe where the belief that functional decline is unavoidable. And with that perspective, people are less likely to participate in proactive programs like falls prevention. That there are implications for assessment outcomes, which can then impact on support planning, and that we really need to be looking at how we optimise communication between the CALD older person and providers. Samuel identified in that paper that that requires adaptation of existing frameworks, and that leads us to our conversation about LifeCurve. So thanks for that paper. Again, that paper we will have linked to some resources that we'll post in the chat at the end of the session. So Samuel, can you just please give us a quick overview of your research? So who your research subjects are and what questions you're trying to answer.
Thanks, Kirsten. Hi, everyone. So the main question we are trying to answer with this current project is how we can improve functional rehabilitation for frail, culturally diverse older adults who are living at home. So to help us with this question, I'm interviewing older adults, their support networks, and service providers, like most of us here.
Great. So what role does LifeCurve have in your research?
So the LifeCurve is part of my interview guide. I discussed it with my participants. In one of my questions, I asked participants to tell me about their struggles performing the activities of daily living on the LifeCurve. And once those conversations start, I probe further to see how they experienced it, how their decline happened, how it compares to the trajectory on the LifeCurve, and other things that would be interesting to find out.
Right. And just for a bit of context, we met because you came and introduced yourself to me at the AAG conference last year. And you told me that you had effectively taught yourself about LifeCurve from using the e-learning modules on the KeepAble website?
Yes, that's correct. That's how I found LifeCurve.
Great. So in those conversations with your culturally and linguistically diverse sort of population, and you've been utilising LifeCurve, what is the relevance of LifeCurve in its existing format? Have you found that there's sort of pros and cons to LifeCurve when you're using it to talk to these communities?
Yes. So I find the LifeCurve relevant to my discussions with participants. They are engaged when we have those conversations, including those who are culturally and linguistically diverse. So I'm interviewing both Anglo-Australians and culturally and linguistically diverse older adults and their support workers. And it's relevant to both groups.
Okay. So the research would suggest to us, because they did research people from different cultural communities, is that the pattern of decline that older adults can experience, or that hierarchy of decline, is generalizable across populations. But you have experienced, I guess, some more nuanced discussions with your clients where maybe some elements of maybe the language in that vertical axis was harder to engage with. What has been your experience there?
So the research is still ongoing. I'm still conducting interviews, so nothing conclusive at the moment. But so far, the Anglo-Australian participants and their support network that I've found find the activities on the LifeCurve, especially those at the top end, more relatable than I am finding my Anglo-Australian and my culturally diverse participants and their support networks. So that's one of the key differences that has shown up so far. It's more relatable to my Anglo-Australian participants.
Can you give an example of where maybe that was not as relatable to one of your culturally diverse sort of interviewees?
Yes, so for the activities like hiking, that's at the top end of the LifeCare that indicate high functional performance. Some of those activities are not relatable to some of my Arabic-speaking participants that I am interviewing. And it's not because they don't have the personal capacity for it, but culturally, most of them, especially the females, are not used to such outdoor exercise activities. So they have the capacity for it, some of them, but it's not something they have ever done or find relatable.
Yeah. So, and then even we've had some conversations too about, the potential, like that value of something like maybe about cooking, that it's often more than just a functional experience, that it has different cultural meaning.
Mm-hmm. So for providers, and I'm sure some providers might have experienced it. So for some of the activities on the LifeCurve, it takes on different meanings when you are talking to the different people. So for some of the cultures, it's a job for a particular gender in that community, and it's not based on capacity, but it's just based on what it looks like in the community.
So is it fair to say then that when you've used LifeCurve with in the context of these interviews, that so do your culturally diverse communities get on board with and relate to it conceptually about what the curves represent and for them?
So far, my culturally diverse participants find it engaging. They also find it a bit challenging to implement out of respect. So I spoke to this older adult who is called and was living in an intergenerational household with her son and the son's family, and they were doing some of the activities for the older adult in question because they felt that it was their duty. They are taking care of them, and it was their duty to reciprocate that care back. And if withdrawing from doing those activities was very challenging, even though they understood why it would be beneficial in the long term. So I think the conversation would keep going on for a while before it starts to get in. But yeah, like there are some cultural practices that just require older adults to be taken care of, including performing ADLs for them, especially when they are in the same households.
So I'm aware that we're getting to the close of our session. But if we wanted to pick up on that, I would imagine that the visual aspect of LifeCurve would really help the communication of what is otherwise quite a complex discussion, that people understand the principle of a functional decline and the representation of the curves. But if people are wanting to use LifeCurve to facilitate these conversations with people from culturally diverse communities, that they have to be prepared to have more nuanced discussions about what those activities look like and to not view them through like a more Anglo lens. Is that a fair summary of what you've found so far?
Yeah, that's bang on.
Okay. So it's useful, but you have to be cautious about how you use it.
Yes, especially when you are involving the family and support networks.
Yes, great. Now, I am aware that we are now pretty much on time, but what I would like to just bring people's attention to, please, is that we would really like to support Samuel's research. You're still looking for providers to talk to, Samuel, I believe, that work with culturally diverse communities. So
Yes, please.
we are putting in the chat a document that you can take with you, that you can sort of save. It's got a QR code and contact details for Samuel. And then we are also going to be posting it's already in the chat there, the summary of everything we talked about today. It's got links to e-learning, links to our bite-sized learning. It's got all of the information about Samuel's research there. And as part of thanking Samuel for coming this morning, I'd really appreciate it if people would consider reaching out to Samuel and just doing an interview with him to help him get his research across the line. And if you would like to follow Samuel with his research, you can find him on LinkedIn. On that note,
I said that yes, I have a $30 gift voucher as a token of appreciation for anyone who would volunteer to share to go into an interview.
Okay, so you're encouraging everyone to do that. Okay, I'm hoping that Samuel is going to be overwhelmed with people volunteering to help him out. I think it's such a valuable piece of work and we're looking forward to hearing all about it. On that note, I would really like to thank all three of you. Thank you so much for your perspectives. So appreciate it, and look forward to hearing more from all of you.
Thanks, Kirsten.